This program is produced by Eagle Mountain Apostolic Resource Center. To find additional episodes of this program, as well as other content, visit eaglemountain.tv.
You gotta wave to him. Gotta wave like this.
I'm not waving.
Try waving.
That's cheesy.
I have never, I'm going on record right now, I've never had a harebrained idea.
He's had lots of ideas that have hair on them.
Did you just say I've had lots of ideas with hair on them?
Yes. Okay.
Oh my goodness. What?
The devil?
I found him.
Why am I not surprised that he's in here?
He's over here in this bucket. Here he is. Mr. Sin! Not bothering us anymore.
How are you doing there, Foxy?
Such a beef wit.
Do you know who you're talking to? I'm Mr. Sin. You can't talk to me like that. You don't have to be rude.
I said beef wit.
Beef wit, that's even worse. No, I'm not a fan of that, but I am a fan of finding out what you're doing after this show. Maybe we could go grab some drinks or something. What do you say?
No thanks.
Hey everyone, welcome to Together We Build. My name is Chris Behnke, and I'm here with
Prudence O'Haire.
Hey, I like how you did that. I like how you introduced yourself.
Yeah, well, I thought that's what I was supposed to do.
I love that. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Prudence. That was awesome. This is, you know what this is? Did you know what this is? You don't? This is episode 26 of season 3.
Oh, that's right. We're closing in on year 3.
Yeah. I mean, they're not really years. They're more like seasons.
It's really amazing
that have taken a year.
That many things to talk about.
Oh, you know what? We're just getting started. We're getting 5 cheers for that. So, episode 26, I think that this has been incredible. We switched formats here to the table. I think going forward, we're going to use the table because we have all this stuff, and like lounging in the couch is a little bit difficult. Mm-hmm. Although I think we may need to get an actual Buckley cam because they can kind of see him in your camera, but he needs his own camera.
Yeah.
So for season 4, we're going to have a Buckley cam.
I'll have y'all know he has a nice pink nose. We could get a Buckley cam and it could be kind of like Rudolph's nose. People could check to see how bright it is.
They could use it to determine how their day is going to go. The brightness of Buckley's nose.
No, that's a little bit weird.
Oh,
I mean, just, it's kind of just keeping an eye on the nose.
Yeah.
Not that isn't weird.
That is actually totally weird. I think the Buckley cam would be more for comic relief and things like that, not necessarily so people can tell what the weather's going to be that day, but whatever you think. Okay, so we've got trivia. I've got trivia, but you also have trivia, but we're going to launch into this next season with better trivia. And also I think maybe we'll watch a video or two, here and there as well. And what is happening? Why are you alphabetizing cough drops right now?
Well, I'm not. I'm just lining them up. I am just coming down.
You may or may not
this
have
side
a cold.
Of the mountain with a minor cold, so
the back side of the mountain.
I'm going to do the best.
Is that the recovery side or the?
Yes, the recovery.
So you're
side.
Coming down off the cold mountain.
Yeah, I don't.
The sniffles.
I seem
Mount
to
sniffles.
have been the only one in the family that's gotten it, so I don't know. I don't remember vigorously licking my fingers or hands.
Okay, that's disgusting. And you said that right as I was touching my face.
Yeah, you shouldn't do that.
I can't.
Spread the germs.
No, I need to. Okay, let's kick this off with some trivia. What is the shortest verse in the Bible?
Oh, yes. Jesus wept.
Nailed it. Excellent job. Okay, so that's a religious trivia fact. And then how about what is the most popular month for weddings in the United States? This is our relationship trivia.
June?
Oh my goodness. Which, isn't that kind of dumb because that's when graduations are? It's kind of bad.
Packed.
It's kind of bad planning.
It's pretty packed
on wedding people.
Yeah.
I feel like fall's better, to be honest with you. Here's general trivia. What is the only mammal that can fly? You know this, and you think they're cute, even though you're incorrect.
A bat?
A bat.
Yeah, I like bats.
Okay, so you have literally just scored 100% on the final episode of season 3. Congratulations. Let me shake your hand.
Did you purposely pick that?
No. Nope. I just said I want some trivia that's general. I want some Bible trivia, and I want some relationship trivia.
I got a new game, which we'll use on our family podcast too, which is called Save It for the Podcast.
Oh yeah, look at this. Save It for the Podcast. By the way, you can get this sweet merch over at chrisandprudence.com.
So where can they find Save It for the Podcast? Because it's not going to be where this program is. It's going to be on YouTube.
Yeah, this program is on YouTube, and also Save It for the Podcast is on YouTube. You can find that at the Chris and Prudence. You can go to chrisandprudence.com on our website, or you can also just go to the Chris and Prudence YouTube. If you just go to YouTube, search for Chris and Prudence, you'll find all sorts of things there. You know what else you'll find there? You'll find shorts about the Nexus, skits. Now, we don't have too many of them because you guys have dropped the ball.
Well, we've been on summer break.
But Prudence and the crew are creating Nexus skits, which is amazing. And then you'll also find Together We Build, and you'll also find Save It for the Podcast. Take a second. What is Save It for the Podcast? What is that?
Well, it's our family podcast. We are missing one child in it because she doesn't live around here, but it's us with our kids.
I love that. I absolutely think that's
super serious.
It's pretty much 100% not serious.
Probably
I would say it's
a serious waste of time to watch it. So
are you kidding me? It's not a serious waste of time. Okay. So you have some trivia, and then I want to watch a quick video before we actually launch into this topic. By the way, this topic is actually very important. I think a lot of people have gone through this sort of thing and they feel very alone. I know that we felt very alone. So this is an important episode that we want to get to in just a moment. So tell me what this is actually.
Okay. Well,
I don't want you to embarrass me.
It's just, I should have known that. This is an actual game, but we're not going to actually play the game. We're just using it for trivia. So,
I see.
In what year did World War I end?
Oh, I should have known that. I have no idea.
I think it's like
you don't
1918 or something.
It's not. Oh.
We're in the early 20s.
I actually have no idea.
I don't know. Okay, let's see. 1918. I did not cheat.
You are the school teacher, by the way.
Well, so are you. You just don't teach the history.
Yeah. I like history. I didn't do amazing at it.
Okay. What color is the middle band of the German flag? I think I know this. I think it's yellow.
Yellow? Yeah, I think it's yellow.
Okay. Oh, it's red. It's
when I
red,
said yellow,
black and yellow, isn't it?
When I said yellow, I actually meant red.
Well, isn't it yellow, black, and red?
I mean, I think it is.
So the middle band.
I meant red. You distracted me with those yellow earrings and all of your beauty, but I was actually thinking red.
Okay, so
I got it right.
What quote do we associate with Uncle Sam?
I want you. We need you.
Okay. I want you.
I want you.
You're correct.
You know what quote we associate with Uncle Sam is, "Are you kidding me?" That's what we really...
How about this one? How do you say astronaut in Russian?
Cosmonaut, obviously. She should have known that.
See, you did know a Russian word. I didn't know that was Russian.
Yes. All of the astronauts, they're all.
We all know that the
with each other.
Hindenburg caught fire, but what was the Hindenburg?
Do you know?
Yes.
It was a giant blimp. Filled with
helium or gas or no. It was definitely gas. I don't know what kind.
Well, helium is a gas.
It was an airship, a Zeppelin.
A Zeppelin.
I love it how they're called Zeppelins. I don't know why, but that is super funny.
It's a really good word. Zeppelin is no,
alien.
listen to me. Zeppelin is a,
I'm just going to.
Zeppelin is a very high quality word. I believe it was filled with, I don't think it was helium. It's very obvious. I should know that. It's like on the tip of my head. It's a very explosive gas, and it's like hydrogen, but it's not hydrogen. I don't think.
Okay.
It's for sure not hydrogen.
Last
what?
one.
Wait, no, I have to look this up. I forgot the mouse pads for these microphones. What's the last one?
I don't think I know this.
What was the Hindenburg filled with? Okay, what's your final answer? Come on, Google.
Propane.
It was for sure not propane, but good guess. No. My computer is just sitting here.
Okay, let's move to this one then. What neurological disorder involves falling asleep involuntarily and randomly?
Narcolepsy, obviously. I'm surprised you didn't know that.
Yep, you're right.
I'm always right.
You're right.
Hydrogen. I was right. Hydrogen gas. 16 large bladders inside the airship's rigid aluminum framework. The hydrogen was lighter than air, kept the ship aloft. Then Hindenburg was also filled with diesel fuel. That was to power the... Do you like that sound effect? Okay, we got to get moving.
Okay, let's get moving.
Okay, I'm going to play this video that just reminded me of us as we finalize this season. Here we go.
Oh.
So the auto door closes on her. He runs over directly into the trailer hitch and about passes out. Okay, let's watch that one. It's worth it. One more time. So the auto door is closing on her. She freaks out. He runs into that, and it's just absolute calamity.
That is literally one of those moments where you get past the pain and you just start laughing.
My shin hurts. That is all you can do. Literally, my shin hurts looking at that. And I feel a little bit sick to my stomach. Have you ever run into a trailer hitch like that?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I just boy, that's going to leave a mark.
I'll tell you what. I feel like the last couple years that we've gone through is the equivalent of running into that trailer hitch in life with your shin. What do you think about that? Is that like such a perfect? Is that literally not just the absolute perfect picture?
Yeah. Yep. It's definitely resonates.
Okay. All right. So this one, what do we call this? When business partnerships fail, navigating the pain of a professional divorce.
Oh, I hate this subject.
Okay. So I think, why do you hate it?
Because it is so awful to have to go
We've
through.
learned the lesson, babe. Give me 5.
Have we?
I mean, I'm giving us to cheer. I believe we've learned it.
Say that, each situation can be very unique in and of itself. Like, our lives aren't over. We don't know what's ahead of us as far as business partnerships go.
That's true. That's true. I definitely feel like, well, let's get into it. Okay. So first of all, let's set the stage. So professional divorce. So when we say that and why we use that is, what?
Don't touch your face. You're going to get a cold.
I can't.
Here, you need something to touch? Here, fiddle with this. There's your
I can't do that. I have to touch my face a little bit.
Toy.
So basically, let's set the stage here. A cough drop?
Yeah, you're going to play with that rather than your face. No.
So basically, we have been serial entrepreneurs for what, 20 years, 25 years?
Yeah.
400 years? It's entrepreneurship is like dog years. So I think for every year that passes while in business, it's like 5 regular years. So we've actually been in business for over 100 years.
That's what it feels like.
So we have started or co-started over 15 different businesses. Most of them haven't succeeded. Some of them have been pretty awesome, but in that time, we've had business partners for most of those. And there's a couple of situations where we're going to talk about today. We're not going to mention specific names. We're going to actually talk about the real situations, two different situations that we had to go through. And when we say professional divorce, what we mean by that, and then just jump in here, Prudence, but what we mean by that is when you're in business with someone, it's like a marriage. You can't just stop. You can't just say, it's not like, hey, I'm part of a, racquetball club and I play every Thursday and I'm really sick of Fred down there, so I can just stop going. It's not like that. You have, sometimes it's more difficult to get out of that relationship from a legal standpoint than a marriage. Actually, I would say a lot of times it's actually more difficult to get out of than a marriage. So you're kind of in this situation where maybe you have recognized it's not good. You need out. You should be out. It's damaging. It's like a dangerous situation, so to speak, but you can't for a lot of different reasons. Maybe you've invested too much, or maybe from a legal standpoint, you can't.
I don't recommend business partnerships if you can.
You don't recommend them at all?
No.
Just not at all.
Not at all.
There's definitely, you for sure haven't read all these notes, because there's definitely a time and a place for where they do make sense. And from a biblical standpoint, it's important. Here's what
I will say is that it is super risky to go into business with friends and come out the other end as friends.
Right. Totally.
It's just, I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
If you value the relationship.
Yeah. I think that it is, I agree with you, but I also feel like sometimes God has called that. I think, Ecclesiastes 4:9 comes to mind, 2 are better than one because they have good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. And there's dozens of Bible verses where your Bible talks about the importance of like collaboration. So I do think there is a time for it, but I think that it should be not the first choice unless you feel God is calling you to partner with someone, and the amount of time and care to determining who you should go into business with should be as great as the time you spend picking your spouse.
Yeah.
And I think that that's almost never
and I think that's
happens.
Probably, it would be fine to go into business with friends if you could guarantee that both of you are going to act sane and rational and want to do everything possible to maintain your relationship where it needs to be.
Yeah.
But you can't guarantee that the other party is going to do that.
Totally.
So that's...
Yeah. And this is why we're saying, you should take as much care with that as you would for picking your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
Because essentially you're picking a spouse for business.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. So there's a couple things, obviously I think at the high level, there's 2 important things to just start off with is choosing the right person. You have to pick the right person. Proverbs 27 says that as iron sharpens iron, one person sharpens another. And basically, when I think about that from a business context, I'm thinking of the critical importance of picking someone that's actually going to sharpen you, not dull you. And sharpen means that there's friction. So you don't have to agree on everything. In fact, you can't agree. You need to complement each other, which means you're going to come up against each other and have conflict, but it should be a sharpening kind of conflict where at the end you both arrive at a better situation, not a dulling conflict where you both arrive at a worse situation.
Okay.
What do you think about that? You don't like the sharpening part?
Well, that's the part where a lot of us get hung up on. I think that well, in our culture overall, we've been taught how to manage our relationships, and that's usually if somebody disagrees with us or doesn't like what we say, or we don't like what they say, then that means we're going to go ahead and wrap it all up and throw it in the trash, because the relationship can't obviously survive. Mm-hmm. And that is a huge fallacy that the devil has perpetrated.
Yeah.
So we take this in all places that we live. Mm-hmm. It's not just business, but we see it in business.
Yeah.
Because it's a big part of our lives.
Right.
We shouldn't be running away from conflict. We should be figuring out, well, how do we resolve this in a peaceful way?
Yeah.
And come back and fix the break, whatever is there. Or maybe the other party has something to say that we haven't seen.
Yeah.
That is valuable.
100%. Yeah, I think the other thing too, before we get into some of these actual stories that are real life stories, is the critical importance of having legal agreements in place. And one of the stories we're going to talk about, we had legal agreements in place and it still went sideways. But what I will say is that we've done a lot of entrepreneurship on our own, and I've also worked with a lot of entrepreneurs over the years from a coaching or mentoring standpoint, or advising from a strategy standpoint. And what I have found that most people don't have an agreement when they start. And they say, well, we're just getting started. We don't even need agreement. We don't even know all the details yet. And the nice thing about agreements is that you can change them as often as you need to. So saying, hey, we don't know all the things yet, so we are not going to create an agreement, is actually a silly excuse to procrastinate making an agreement. And there's nothing that is as important as making sure you have an agreement, even if it's with your absolute closest friend that you know you can trust. You need to have an agreement in place for no other reason, if there's no other reason, so that there's clarity as you're starting things off. It is very important to ensure that there's clarity. And agreements doesn't mean you don't trust each other. Having an agreement actually helps facilitate trust between people in a very important way.
It brings clarity. Well, at least it should. We should all be on the same page as far as what the agreement means.
What were we watching last night? A clip from Judge Judy?
Yeah.
And she was reading this handwritten agreement between this girl and this personal trainer. And it was like, that's an example of an agreement that didn't bring clarity because it was nonsensical.
Right.
But a simple agreement helps bring so much clarity to the relationship and fixes expectations.
And also, when things go sour and you take it to a judge or you take it to a lawyer,
mediator,
yeah, they're the ones that say, this is what this agreement says.
Right.
Regardless of what the other party is disputing.
Right. Right.
It's important.
Super good. Okay. So let's dig into the first of these two stories. We're going to talk about two stories today briefly. We're not going to name specific names, but speaking of legal agreements, let's start with the one where we had a legal agreement in place right from the very beginning that didn't matter. Actually, in both these cases, we had legal agreements in place, but we had a business and it had been running for several years with someone else. And it was going really well. And a third party that knew everybody involved with the first business came in and wanted to start an adjacent business. So for example, in this case, they wanted to start a skincare line that was an adjacent business to the fitness company that we already had. So it was very complimentary. Super made perfect sense. It was something that we had talked about doing. And since we already had a strong brand, we had thousands of customers all over the world. It was a really great way to do it. Now, the person came to us and said, I know all about this product. and it's a passion of mine and I love it and I want to launch it, but I don't know much about business. And I really feel like together we could really help each other a lot. And we agreed. So we created an operating agreement, went into business with this person. And in the operating agreement, we stated for the first 2 years, we would invest our earnings from whatever profit there was in the business back into the business for advertising. So that's what happened. And the product took off, not amazingly, but it took off. And after, was it 3 years? Or four?
Maybe even more than that.
3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
The person that came to us and we originally founded, everything was going well. The product, by the way, was named our brand.
Yeah.
It was actually the same brand of the company that had been in business for years before this started. But after a few years, they came and said, we're no longer part of this.
Mm-hmm.
You have no ownership of it and didn't help enough. And you have nothing to say about it, and you have no ownership of it. Now, what was really interesting about this is we had been friends with this people since childhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is an example where we went into business with some friends. We felt like we were fairly well aligned in our Christian beliefs. I mean, I honestly don't know how well, but grew up together in the church, and all of a sudden, even with a clear legal agreement in place, they decided one day that they were on their own and we didn't have any part of it, which it was an ironic situation because their product was actually named our brand.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you have to add to that, Prudence?
And the contract meant nothing to them. It was absolutely as if it was
irrelevant.
Never made.
It was irrelevant.
Never made.
A signed legal operating agreement by both parties. And, we had that operating agreement in place before we actually launched anything.
It was almost as if their emotions, they decided their emotions were going to trump the legal document.
Yeah. So that's what happened. And then just to wrap up the story, and then I want to talk about several different aspects of it, Prudence, but just to wrap up the story. So what happened then was we pushed back. We had several phone calls that went nowhere because we would read the operating agreement and they would say, oh, that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what that says.
Yeah.
And again, the irony is like the product was named from our branding. It was our branding with a legal trademark and everything with the U.S. Patent Office. So it was just a super bizarre situation. What happened is nothing moved forward. We didn't actually, after we realized the relationship was gone with a lifelong friend.
Yep.
And it kind of seemed like it was irreparable. Then we went to an attorney who was like, all right, let's sue these guys. We're like, no. We don't actually want to sue anyone. What we want is for our investment of our brand, we want the formula and we want this to stop and they can no longer do this. And that's it. Like, it's just fine. Let's just part ways. And, we drafted a letter with all that, and they just kind of were like, no, we're not going to do that. So we just worked with the attorney, and the attorney's like, I guess we're going to have to sue them. And we were very clear with the attorney. That's fine. We can move down this path, but our goal is not to sue them. Our goal is to actually do a cease and desist and just kind of end the relationship.
Right.
But we're going to use the threat of a lawsuit. And the crazy thing is that this lawsuit it was going to be a multi-$100,000 lawsuit, and it just kept going farther and farther and farther until finally they realized, gosh, we got to hire an attorney. And 3 days after they hired an attorney, it was all done because their attorney looked at everything and said, you guys are insanos.
Yeah.
Just give them the formula and pay their attorney fees, because we actually didn't want to have a lawsuit, which we could have easily won.
Yeah.
Super easy. How was that? Yeah.
Yes.
But that wasn't our intent. Our intent was, wow, we didn't think you we now realize you weren't who we thought you were.
Yeah.
We need to end this, and let's end it and not do a thing where, all right, now we're going to like sue you guys.
Which we had legal right to do.
Yes. And of course the attorney's like, yeah, let's get him. So part of the lesson that I don't have in the notes is you got to pick the right attorney, because they will see an opportunity to take advantage of someone, and it's completely legal, but it might not be the right thing to do from a kingdom perspective. Mm-hmm. So that's super important also, just a side note. So it ended. They had to pay everything. Their second, like 2 days after they hired an attorney, and that attorney reviewed everything ended. They signed over everything. They paid for our attorney fees, which we were trying to keep low because we knew they were going to have to pay them eventually. Mm-hmm. And then that was it. That was the end of it. But this was crazy. So I want to talk about a couple things. Like, this was a lifelong friend, especially to you. So like, what was the relational cost? Like, what was the emotional cost from that?
Well, I mean, I think I didn't understand why this friend would choose this despicable thing.
Like this weirdo, mind-bending thing.
Yes. Over relationship and years that we had building relationship out. It was mind-blowing to me that somebody would want that over valuing a friendship that they'd had for 30 years or however many years it was.
Very weird.
It was preposterous in my mind.
Yeah.
And, and it was like, they had to decide on their end that they wanted to come back and make peace with our relationship, and they wouldn't.
Right.
They didn't.
So from a kingdom perspective, what would you say? Because I guarantee you right now, there are people that are like, wow, that sounds similar to the thing I went through. What would you say to them? And then we're going to go on to the second and bigger story.
Well, you can't force people to do what they don't want to do. Mm-hmm. And if they're telling you who they really are, I guess you better believe them.
You mean through their actions?
Through their actions, through their inability and unwillingness to come back and say, hey, I'm sorry, we were wrong, and I'd like to repair our relationship.
Yeah.
What can I do?
Right.
This is what God would want for us.
A reconciliation.
And that didn't happen. And so it's extremely disappointing and hurtful when people choose things like money and anger over
or power
over
control.
Stuff like this.
Yeah.
Over valuing their relationship with you.
Yeah, totally weird. Totally weird, because we weren't talking about millions of dollars or even hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Absolutely not.
We're talking about hundreds of dollars or maybe thousands. And so it wasn't like, look, I got to protect my family. There's $7 million at stake. It was nothing like that.
No.
It's like, it's mind-boggling, but it just shows you the importance of understanding at a much deeper level than you might think is needed who you're getting into business with.
Yeah.
Let's pivot to the second story. So the second story spans over the course of over a decade. And basically we had some friends that we were very close with. Now we were very serious about our Christianity our whole lives. Very serious about, we weren't and never have been just Christians on Sunday. Like, we believe Jesus died for us and that he is our Lord and Savior. And that is woven through every part of who we are, all 7 days in everything. And the sad thing is that a lot of times it's hard to find people that are like that. And so we had a hard time finding friends that cared and loved Jesus as much as we did. We had lots of acquaintances that, loved Jesus, and we hung out with them, and that was cool, but we wanted some like real deep friends. So we finally found some friends that just really seemed to share an excitement about Jesus as much as us and wanted it woven through all of different parts of their lives, including business. They were also entrepreneurs. They also had children the same ages of our children. So we became very close to them over a several year period. They became our closest friends by far. And we spent a lot of time with their family. We went on vacations together with their family. Our kids became close friends with their kids. And it was pretty awesome, actually. There were definitely some red flags. I think there were some religious spirit red flags that we just didn't want to think about, I think. But also part of that is you don't agree with everything your friends, you don't have to agree on everything.
No.
So they were entrepreneurs, we were entrepreneurs, and after we'd been friends for several years, we decided to form a company together. We built that company. That company started to become successful. That company evolved into a new kind of company, and that company became even more successful. And there was some point of time there where it was very difficult. We were growing really fast, but it was also extremely stressful. Money was always very tight. Revenue was always hard to come by, but at the same time we were growing. It's the start. It's the life of a startup. It's totally to be expected. We did have legal agreements in place, operating agreement and so forth. And, we were trying to do everything really well. We were trying to use kingdom principles in every part of that business. And then it kept growing. We decided to move that company from the Portland area to Central Oregon. And during this high growth period of it, and again, it was very stressful, very difficult. We had poured in everything, all of our savings and retirement accounts and everything that we had built up, anything that we had, every ounce. Like the whole family was involved, like to save money, all our entire family, even little kids would be down there vacuuming to save money on cleaning services. It was like all hands on deck, all in every part of our lives into this business. Prudence, you want to add anything to that story before we talk about the dark turn?
No, I mean, I don't know that I have much to add other than...
you were tightly involved, but not tightly involved. What was your perspective from the outside?
Well, I wanted it to succeed, so I did everything possible, even if I personally wasn't getting a paycheck.
Yeah.
To do and to make things happen.
Yeah.
And to set it up for success. So I wanted it to succeed.
Right. It was exciting because it was a bright future, but at the same time it was really difficult, super, super hard. So, what had happened, and we don't need to go into all the details because it literally would take like 6 episodes for real. Like it was so much that happened. But essentially what happened at the high level was there was a relationship tear that began to happen right around the time that we were moving. Now it had been it for sure had been building for probably several years.
I would liken it more to like a volcano.
A volcano that was
about to erupt, but then finally one day did.
Yeah. So basically what happened is we were moving from Portland to Bend, the company, and we were going to have a new office in Bend and an office in Portland, and we're going to be running both of those offices. And a couple, a month after we got here or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. It's about a month or so. They came over and sat down with us and basically told us that we were horrible people and just destroyed our personal relationship.
Yeah.
Just absolutely obliterated it.
Yep. They basically, if our relationship was tangible, they literally...
lit it on fire.
And
then put it in the toilet.
But
not a clean toilet, a porta potty.
And then left.
So at that time I was like, I need to get out of this business.
Yeah.
I think I need to get out of this business that night. And Prudence was like, no, we've invested too much. And I still don't know.
Well, because I saw very much like the devil's hand was operating
100%
in what he wanted to destroy, and he was using people's immature emotions to develop lies and accusations and stupid
craziness, silly things.
And I didn't want us falling for that trick as far as what I saw happening.
Yeah. So at that time, we decided to stay, and then became this very strange situation where for the next 2 years, basically 2 full years, I would go to work every day, and this is work, like a lot of work. This is like 60-hour work weeks work. And kind of have this awkward scenario where they had destroyed the relationship, but I still had to work with this person that used to be my best friend, but still kind of was, but wasn't because of the horrible relationship situation. Now, we immediately tried to employ a biblical type of reconciliation. And we immediately recognized that this was kind of like a marriage. So really what we wanted was a Christian marriage counselor to come in, meet with the 4 of us, and really help us walk out reconciliation. And that never happened, never happened. And there was a lot of bizarre pushback, like we can't let anyone know. Our character has to stay clean. We'll have to find someone from out of town because no one from in town can know that we're like having this problem. It was very bizarre. There's an incredible amount of shame that kind of surrounded that. And we're like, look, that's cool and everything, but we need to fix this. And there was no effort ever made in reconciliation ever. And then eventually, after a long period of time of us kind of like driving that, like, no, this has to happen. This has to happen. An unqualified person that was already familiar with this scenario kind of served as a poor quality mediator, not equipped, not qualified, but they did their best. I mean, they tried, but they sucked, to be really honest. And kind of brought us together, and we had a period where the woman, who was the primary driving factor in destroying the relationship, kind of made like a half-hearted apology about the way she brought about the accusations, but not the accusations themselves. So in some ways it was an apology, but in some ways it actually made it worse because it was kind of like doubling down on the accusations. And that was it. No real repair, everything very awkward. And then about a year before we had to close down the business, there were several things that started to happen that were strange, that my business partner and their family were doing that did not fall in alignment with the character that I had kind of watched them have. And we went from a company having no debt at all to having $100,000 worth of IRS debt for payroll taxes. And that is the worst kind of debt, payroll taxes, because it's actually your employee's debt. Now the government doesn't hold them accountable, it holds you accountable, but it is the worst kind of debt in a lot of ways. And that was really essentially because our business partner, who had a majority share of the company, had continued to decide to pay himself more and more and more and more and more, while we took less and less, and while the company was struggling financially. And then eventually one day the IRS showed up actually with badges and shut the whole thing down. And they kind of allowed us to continue to try and operate the company, to scale it back. We could no longer pay ourselves. But the thing that's crazy about all that is during that time, I recognized my inability as a minority shareholder to actually be able to decide things and say, no, if we continue down this path, we're going to go out of business. We're going to go bankrupt. Oh, yeah. We're going into debt.
We were powerless to make decisions, and we were doomed if we left.
So it didn't roughly matter. A year before, I had a series of meetings with an attorney. I hired an attorney, had a series of meetings with them, and said, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here because I feel like this person is driving the company into more and more debt, and there's nothing I can actually do to prevent it. Yeah. And the attorney said, hey, you can't get out because, you can, but you'll still be legally responsible because you have, at the time we had roughly 30% ownership of the company. You have a lot of ownership. So the IRS is going to stick you with a financial obligation. Creditors will stick you with the financial obligation. But I didn't have enough authority to actually affect change. My business partner was kind of doing whatever he wanted, paying himself
trapped.
$15,000 plus a month. And it was just crazy. It was just crazy. So we were trapped, and the attorney said, look, I recommend, unless you want to personally sue this person, which again, maybe we should have, but we didn't. Because that would have immediately stopped the company also, which would have just perpetuated. So his advice, the attorney's advice was stay in there, do your best to affect change in the positive direction and do a course correction, because if you just quit, you're still liable.
Right.
So
basically, you're not getting off the boat at all.
So
if the boat goes down,
start bailing water out.
You're going
start
down with it.
And that's what happened. And then as that happened, the IRS came in, we began working with them. Then my business partner and his wife began doing illegal things, lying to the IRS, not paying the mortgage on properties that they owned where they had rent coming in, which is fraud, like hiding assets from creditors that were trying to repossess them, and just mind-boggling things. So that all ended up collapsing, and we negotiated with the IRS for that debt, had to file personal bankruptcy. We had no personal debt. We had to file personal bankruptcy and negotiate with the IRS for over 4 years. Yep. It was one of the most difficult things we have ever gone through. Absolutely horrific. We actually had to go to counseling because remember, this was like our closest friends. That relationship got destroyed. We stayed in, kept pouring in, could not get any reconciliation. And then everything that we had poured, basically 10 years of our life into, all of our savings, everything collapsed over the course of a very short amount of time, 6 months. And then we're kind of left there like Job in a pile of rubble, picking our sores, trying to figure out, how is this possible? It must be our fault. We had to go to counseling, and it was traumatic and painful. Like, it was absolutely horrific. Your thoughts on that?
I think that a couple of the hardest parts was the same piece where it's like, hey, I thought that these guys were professing Christians, but they're really not presenting themselves as that in these certain circumstances. So they're definitely picking and choosing what they want to do or feel like doing. And that was very disappointing to me.
Yeah.
Because we could have presented a restoration of relationship.
Oh, it could have helped a lot of people.
That would be very helpful to the world and to other people in the Christian world. But because they were too good for outside help, and they obviously didn't really want to restore anything, we got left with high and dry, basically. Yeah. And we couldn't talk to people within the company about it. We couldn't talk to anyone else because they didn't understand what we were going through. It was such a huge, monstrous thing that we didn't know anyone who had walked through the same fire, and no one could give us advice on how to manage our emotions, how to feel about it, what to do, how to move forward. It was just really an awful situation that we were stuck in, and nobody had a clue on how to help us.
Yeah, I feel like this verse, Galatians 6:9, is so good. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. And I think that the harvest that we reaped, when I look back, you're like, well, we didn't reap squat from that. Like, it was horrible financially, emotionally, like health-wise, everything was horrible. But that's not actually true. We did reap a harvest, and the harvest was, maybe we needed to get out of that with those guys that were dishonest when we did. Maybe it would, if it would have continued to go and became more and more successful, we would have gone down a path that wasn't what the Lord had. And I think that it's super important for us to understand that we have to have just a relentless drive to going after what God has for us, no matter what the cost is. And we can't ever let our ethics kind of slack up any just because it would be easier. There was all kinds of things that we could have done like they were doing that were gray areas or illegal that we could have gotten away with that would have benefited us in that situation. But where would that have really gotten us? Because the Lord would have still known. I think that, as we're thinking about wrapping this up, what is the point of telling these difficult tales? Well, a couple things. And then I want to hear your thoughts on this too, Prudence. But one is that I believe where we are at this time in history, one of the things that's going to be critical for turning our nation around and really the economy of the whole world will be entrepreneurship. I think that is the way of the future. I think we've moved into a season of entrepreneurship where small business is in the US, small business already is the primary employer, the primary financial driver over everything. Even the biggest corporations, billion-dollar corporations, small business is the number one driver already, and it will continue to do so. So if you're listening to this, likely entrepreneurship is part of your future. You agree with that, right? Like, that is the way of the future. You're looking at me like, if you say so, sucker, but we have two horrible stories. So with that in mind, people need to understand this. They need to be prepared. They need to have legal agreements in place. They need to be prepared to understand how hard it gets. And no matter how rosy and exciting that initial PowerPoint is where you're deciding to do a business, it will get very difficult no matter what.
Yeah.
That's true, because if it's what God wants you to do, the enemy's after it anyway.
Yeah.
So that's one. The second thing is because that's already true, I am certain that there are people that are listening to this right now that have gone through similar situations where they thought like that were just horrifically horrible. And they had to make choices where they decided, do I go this path or this path? And you got to think about this stuff in advance so that when you're presented with that choice, you make the right choice.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Prudence?
Well, I think this has a lot to do with owning our own responsibility in who we say we serve.
Yeah.
You can't force other people to make those choices. And so in cases like this, it's really, how do you recover yourself and your own sanity and mindset and not fall into the trap of bitterness, resentment, and hatred and everything else that goes with it, because that is what the devils want for you in this case. And let's just say it does nothing helpful at all.
Right.
It only hurts you. It only hurts those around you. It's just a poison that we get offered to take when stuff like this happens. It's set out before us and we are tempted.
Don't take the bait.
We are tempted to take it.
Yeah.
And we cannot do it.
Yeah.
Because it only makes things worse.
Right. Totally.
It only makes things worse, and it doesn't make us feel better.
Yeah.
At all.
100%.
It doesn't. So, we had to battle with a lot of that, and, not swallowing that down, because even though in the face of it all, it is extremely unfair.
Yeah.
It is extremely disappointing.
Yeah.
That other fellow people that say that they're believers are not big enough men and women to look past what is happening, to see their part that they are playing in it.
Yeah.
And make a turnaround. It's serious pride. It's a serious matter of pride.
Yeah.
And it's gotta fall. It's gotta fall in order for things to turn around, you know, and I can see how differently things could have turned out had the other couple decided to make a change and set down their prideful attitudes, their religious prideful attitudes, and say, oh, okay, well, maybe what I, you know, felt or said or did wasn't quite right, but we need to remedy this because I'm called as a Christian to make every effort to be at peace with one another.
Yeah.
And this doesn't feel very peaceful right now.
Right.
And I am a primary driver of it.
Right.
And any other pieces that needed to be taken. Like, there is no apology to us for what had happened.
Yeah.
We got left with nothing but a huge IRS bill. No, hey, I'm sorry that this went this way. I'm sorry I made decisions that helped put you in the hopper for 4 years.
Yeah.
There was nothing.
Right.
And we had to live with that on our end and say, no, we're going to let this go.
Right.
We're going to learn what we can positively from it. And what we now know is that we survived this, and we survived it, and we became stronger because we learned that the Lord was our strength through it all.
Yeah.
And so now we are people that can tell the next person that shows up and says, hey, I'm hurting because of this situation and I don't know what to do. We can tell them, now we're survivors of this and you're going to make it through it just fine. And here's what you need to do.
And here's how you get through
to get
and here's what you're probably feeling. Yep.
And it's okay to feel, you know, your emotions and such, but don't let it go into the bitterness root, the resentment root that will stay there, because that's only poison for you.
Yeah.
You're going to make it through this. This is just a one little chapter in your life. And at the time, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like it's the end.
Yeah, it feels like it's the end.
It feels like it's never going to end.
Yeah.
But it will. It's going to end.
Yeah. And just really quick as we're wrapping this up, you know, some people say, hey, no matter what, you have to reconcile. Like, you're not a Christian, you're not a fallen Christ if you don't like reconcile. And here's what I'd say to that. First of all, it is really important to do everything possible to reconcile for a couple of reasons. Most people, by the way, don't. Most people just bail immediately and say, screw those guys. I never want to see them again. I hate them. And they let that bitterness kind of stay with them and control them their whole life. So that's for sure not effective, not good, not God's plan. The way that you should approach this, from everything that we've learned, is to first understand that no matter what those people did to you, because it's probably horrible, and they may not even know how horrible what they did was, or maybe they do, but it's probably horrible, is that God still loves them. He still wants them to have a relationship with him, and he still made them on purpose for a purpose, and he still cares about them. And so we should also, no matter how hard they hurt us, we should also do everything possible to reconcile. And in this example, we, tried to do everything possible, from hiring counselors and going back over and over and over again and saying, hey, can we reconcile this? And even coming back, what was it, like 8 years later or something like this, or 5 years later, and reaching back out and saying, hey, let's go grab coffee or whatever. How many years later?
Oh, no, that was probably 2.5 after the business closed.
2.5, but like 4 or 5 after the initial breakup, going back and trying again. But at the end of the day, you have to forgive them. You have to look at them and recognize that God loves them and that he still wants the best for them. And you should too, but you have to let it go, and they still have to decide. So in the case with these, We did everything possible multiple times over a series of years. There's no way to reconcile it, and you have to just let it go. And that's actually scriptural as well. There's a point
that's all you can do.
You kick the dust off your sandals and go to the next town.
You have to make sure your hands are clean on your end.
Because what you don't want is for Satan to just throw a rock around your neck and say, you got to reconcile this. The Bible says, and then you don't move forward what God has for you.
Right. Or feel shame. Because you couldn't. In some cases, you can't. You can't reconcile.
Yeah.
The other party's not willing to.
That's right.
There's nothing you're going to do about it. And you can't carry the shame of their actions and decisions towards you.
So you cannot let Satan put that shame on you. You have to let it go. But you should and have an obligation to do everything possible to reconcile that relationship. And I think this is an important episode. I think it's a little bit of a downer to end season 3 on, but I think it's an important relationship because I do believe that as we move into this next season in just the whole world, there's going to be more and more people that are going to need to come together to learn how to work together. It's why we developed the Human Nexus and all the God designed platform and stuff is to help people learn how to work together. They need to. So things like this are going to be more and more common where there's breakups. And you guys need to understand you're not alone. It's hard. You'll get through it. Keep your eyes focused on Jesus. Do whatever's possible to reconcile, but never carry the shame of what happened. Just for sure, don't do that. Any final thoughts, Prudence?
Well, I just would think that of all the people in the world, God's people should know how to walk through these issues and come out the other end in a repaired format.
We should be setting the
restored relationships should be the normal.
Yeah, it absolutely
not
should.
The exception.
Totally.
And unfortunately, we're all very active in choosing the easy route out, which is not dealing with what's in front of us.
Totally.
And hoping it will just go away.
Yeah.
So
let's all commit together to go forward into the future, committing to do what it takes to reconcile, to do what it takes to never carry the shame of things that don't work out, and to be really wise as serpents, gentle as doves, wise about who we get into partnerships with and how we approach it, and getting wise counsel and having other people come around us and help us. Let's be really smart, because I think what's needed in the future, what's going to be needed is more collaboration than ever. There's going to be more partnerships than ever. It's going to be more opportunities than ever for Satan to attack us in this way. So let's not let him do that. Amen. Okay. Thank you so much. This has been an amazing season. If you want to watch any of the episodes of Together We Build, just pop over to chrisandprudence.com. You can find all the episodes there. You can also find links to this other thing that Prudence was mentioning, Save It for the Podcast. And there's merch and other stuff. We'd love it. We'd love your support. This whole show is produced by Eagle Mountain TV. You can learn more about Eagle Mountain and support what we're doing there at that ministry over at eaglemountain.global. We're about to kick off season 4. I'm super pumped for it. The first thing we're going to get into in season 4 is we're going to talk about creativity in a surprising way, I think. And we're going to talk about why it's so important. So you're going to want to stick around for season 4, which is going to get started soon. So be on the lookout for it. Other than that, we'll see you on the next one.
Yep. God bless.
Thank you for watching Together We Build with Chris and Prudence. To learn more about this and other amazing programs, visit eaglemountain.global. To learn more about Chris and Prudence and the ministries they serve, visit chrisandprudence.com.